"You're going to have sex with me," said the virgin women he discovered in his abandoned rancher. The colony world of Red Mesa stretched far beyond the horizon, a land of dust storms, glowing skies, and abandoned settlements left behind by failed dreams. Rusted wind towers creaked in the dry air, and old ranch fences cut long lines across the red earth. Few people still lived here. Fewer stayed long. One of the last who remained was a quiet rancher named Elias. He lived alone on a wide piece of land, once filled with workers, animals, and laughter. Now the ranch was mostly silent except for the hum of repair drones and the slow footsteps of mechanical cattle grazing under a pale sun. Elias preferred it that way. After years of working as a frontier pilot, he chose isolation over crowded spaceports. Each morning he checked the perimeter sensors, repaired broken tools, and fed the animals he had rescued from abandoned farms. Life was simple, predictable, and calm. Until the signal appeared. It came through his old scanner late in the afternoon, a faint pulse buried beneath static. At first he thought it was another broken beacon left behind by settlers who had fled the planet. But the signal repeated again and again, steady and precise. Someone or something was active near the old western field. Elias grabbed his coat and stepped outside. The sky glowed orange as twin suns lowered toward the horizon. He saddled his hoverhorse, an old mechanical mount he had rebuilt himself, and rode toward the source. The western field had once held a large barn, now mostly collapsed. Wind pushed through broken wood panels, making hollow sounds like distant voices. Elias dismounted and scanned the area carefully. Years on the frontier taught him never to trust silence. His tracker beeped again. The signal came from beneath the ground. He frowned. Hidden doors were common during early colonization days. Some settlers buried storage bunkers to protect supplies from storms and raiders. Elias moved debris aside until he found a metal hatch almost buried under dust. It was still powered. That made no sense. With slow movements, he forced the hatch open. Cold air rushed upward. A narrow staircase led down into darkness lit by faint blue lights. He hesitated only a moment before stepping inside. The underground chamber was clean, too clean for an abandoned world. Soft machines hummed quietly. At the center stood a single cryopod glowing with pale light. Inside was a woman. Her eyes were closed, dark hair floating slightly in frozen liquid. Strange symbols covered the pod's surface, written in a language Elias did not recognize but felt oddly familiar. "Who left you here?" he muttered. The system detected his presence. Lights brightened. A soft tone echoed through the room. The pod began to open. Elias stepped back, unsure whether he was helping or making a mistake. Cold vapor escaped as the lid lifted slowly. The woman inside gasped sharply, her chest rising as she took her first breath in what might have been years. Her eyes opened wide. They were bright, alert, and filled with confusion. She looked at him immediately. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then she whispered something in a strange accent. Elias caught only a few familiar words. "Protector, claim, safe." "I think you've got the wrong idea," he said carefully. "You're safe, yeah, but I didn't claim anything." She tried to sit up but stumbled. Elias stepped forward and helped her gently out of the pod. She was weak, shaking slightly as her body adjusted. The moment her feet touched the floor, she looked at him again with sudden seriousness. "You opened the chamber," she said slowly, choosing her words with care. "That means you accept responsibility," Elias sighed quietly. "No," he said. "It means I heard a signal and came to check it." She studied him, clearly confused. "My people, traditions, rescuer becomes guardian," she said. "Well," he replied, trying to stay calm, "we're going to need to talk about that." He gave her a jacket from his pack and helped her walk toward the surface. The sunset greeted them with warm light, painting the ranch in gold and shadow. She stared at the wide plains as if seeing freedom for the first time. "What world is this?" she asked. "Red Mesa Colony," Elias answered, "mostly abandoned." Her expression changed, almost sad. "They hid me far away." Elias watched her carefully. "Who hid you?" he asked. She hesitated as if unsure whether to trust him. "I don't know any more," she said finally. As they reached the ranch house, Elias noticed movement in the sky, small drone shapes far above, almost invisible against the clouds. His instincts tightened. Someone else might already know she was awake. Inside the ranch house, she moved slowly, touching objects with curiosity. She seemed both strong and fragile at the same time. When he offered food, she accepted carefully, as if unsure how much she was allowed to take. "What's your name?" he asked. She paused. "Lyra," she said softly. "Well, Lyra," he replied, "you're welcome to stay here until we figure out what's going on." She watched him closely. "You are kind," she said. "Not what I expected." Elias shrugged. "Out here, people help each other. That's just how it works." Night fell quietly across the ranch. Wind carried the smell of dust and distant rain. As Elias checked the outer sensors, warning lights flashed briefly. Unknown aerial signatures detected. He looked toward the dark sky again. Those drones were getting closer. Inside, Lyra stood by the window, staring at the stars. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Elias rested his hand near his belt where an old frontier blaster hung. "Now," he said, "we figure out who put you in that chamber and why they might be coming back." The lights of approaching ships flickered faintly on the horizon. And for the first time in years, the quiet ranch was no longer alone. Morning arrived slowly over Red Mesa Colony, the twin suns rising through thin clouds and painting the red plains with soft gold light. The ranch looked peaceful from a distance, but Elias knew that peace would not last. He had barely slept. The unknown ships detected during the night were still circling far beyond the horizon. They had not approached directly yet, which meant whoever controlled them was watching and waiting. Elias stepped outside, scanning the sky carefully. Dust moved across the land in long lines shaped by the wind. Mechanical cattle grazed quietly, unaware of danger. Everything looked normal, and that made him more uneasy. Behind him, the ranch house door opened slowly. Lyra stepped outside, wrapped in one of his old coats. Her movements were steadier now, though she still looked overwhelmed by the open landscape. She paused beside him, watching the endless plains. "It is very quiet here," she said softly. "Usually," Elias answered, "not sure about today." She followed his gaze toward the sky. "You sense danger," she said. "Yeah," he replied simply. They stood together in silence for a moment. Lyra seemed unsure whether to speak, as if searching for the right words. "My people believe rescues are never accidents," she said finally. "Paths cross for a reason." Elias gave a small smile. "Out here, paths cross because someone takes a wrong turn or a machine breaks down." She tilted her head slightly, trying to understand his humor. After breakfast, Elias showed her around the ranch. She watched carefully as he repaired a damaged drone, her eyes full of curiosity. "You live alone?" she asked. "Mostly," he said. "Some traders pass through, sometimes neighbors need help, but yeah, mostly alone." "Why choose loneliness?" she asked. He paused, tightening a bolt on the drone before answering. "Because it's peaceful," he said quietly. "And because people don't always stay." Lyra seemed to understand more than he expected. She nodded slowly and said nothing more. Later, Elias brought out an old hoverbike. "Time for you to learn something useful," he said. She looked uncertain but followed his instructions. At first, she struggled to balance, gripping the controls too tightly. But she learned quickly, her movements becoming more confident with each attempt. When she finally completed a full circle without crashing, she laughed softly, a sound filled with surprise and joy. Elias found himself smiling. For a moment, the danger felt far away. That feeling ended when the warning alarm sounded. Both turned toward the ranch house as red lights flashed across the yard. Elias ran to the control panel. 3 ships had entered the outer perimeter. "They're not hiding anymore," he muttered. Lyra's expression changed instantly, fear mixed with recognition. "They came for me," she said. "Looks like it," Elias replied. He handed her a small communication device. "Stay close, follow what I say." Instead of hiding, Lyra stood beside him. "I will not run," she said firmly. Elias studied her for a moment, then nodded. "All right, but we do this smart." The ships landed beyond the ridge. Figures appeared, armored bounty hunters carrying advanced weapons. Their movements were precise, professional. This was not a random group. A voice echoed through Elias' external speakers. "Rancher, you are harboring protected property. Release the subject and no harm will come to you." Elias leaned against the railing, completely calm. "She's not property," he said into the microphone. "Incorrect," the voice replied. "The subject belongs to the Dynasty program. Compliance is required." Lyra's hands trembled slightly, but she stood firm. "I will not return," she whispered. Elias glanced at her. "Then we hold the line." The first drones moved forward, scanning the ranch. Elias activated hidden defenses, old mining lasers repurposed into perimeter tools. Bright beams flashed across the ground, forcing the bounty hunters to stop. "Last warning," the voice said. Elias shut off the speaker. "All right," he said quietly. "Guess we're doing this the hard way." The battle began suddenly. Enemy drones rushed forward, firing energy blasts that struck fences and dirt. Elias moved quickly, using the terrain to his advantage. He knew every rock and structure on the ranch. Lyra watched carefully, then noticed a control signal linking several drones together. "There," she said, pointing. "Central relay." Elias followed her direction and fired a precise shot. One drone exploded and the others lost coordination. "You've got good eyes," he said. "I studied strategy," she replied. They worked together without needing many words. Elias handled weapons and positioning while Lyra identified weaknesses in enemy patterns. Eventually, the bounty hunters retreated slightly, regrouping near their ships. "That was only a test," Elias said. "They'll come back stronger." Lyra looked at him seriously. "I did not wish to bring danger to your home," he shrugged. "Danger finds people out here anyway." She hesitated before speaking again. "My memories contain coordinates," she said slowly. "A station hidden in orbit. Perhaps answers are there." Elias considered this carefully. Leaving the ranch meant risk. Staying meant more attacks. He looked across the Red Plains, his home, his safe place, now threatened by forces he barely understood. "Then maybe it's time we go find those answers," he said. Lyra nodded. For the first time since waking, her expression held determination instead of fear. As the twin suns began to set again, Elias prepared the old cargo ship hidden behind the canyon ridge. Engines hummed back to life after years of silence. The ranch lights flickered behind them as they lifted into the sky. Below, the Red Plains stretched endlessly, quiet once more, but no longer safe. And ahead, among the stars, waited the truth about who Lyra really was, and why powerful people were willing to cross the galaxy to capture her. The old cargo ship rose slowly through the thin atmosphere of Red Mesa Colony, its engines shaking as if waking from a long sleep. Elias held the controls steady while the stars grew brighter around them. The ranch disappeared below, becoming only a small memory among endless red plains. Lyra stood behind him, watching the sky through the front glass. She had never traveled freely before. Every movement of the ship seemed to fill her with equal parts wonder and fear. "You fly like a frontier rider," she said quietly. Elias gave a small smile. "Flying and riding aren't that different," he replied. "Both need patience." The ship reached orbit, and the planet curved beneath them like a glowing marble. Silence filled the cabin except for the hum of old machinery. Lyra moved closer to the navigation screen. "The coordinates should be here," she said, touching her temple gently. "My memory implant is unlocking more information." A faint map appeared on the display, hidden signals scattered across space like tiny stars. One location pulsed brighter than the rest. "There," she whispered. Elias adjusted the course. "Let's see what secrets you're carrying." The journey through space felt strange compared to the quiet ranch life. Instead of wind and dust, there was only darkness and distant light. Lyra spent hours asking questions about human life, about choices, and about why Elias chose solitude. "You speak often about freedom," she said, "but you live alone. Is that freedom?" Elias thought for a moment before answering. "Freedom isn't about being alone," he said slowly. "It's about choosing where you belong." She nodded, thinking deeply about his words. As they traveled, small fragments of her memory returned. She spoke about a program created by powerful groups seeking to preserve her species. Children were raised under strict traditions, taught that their futures were already decided. "They called it harmony," she said. "But I remember feeling trapped." Elias listened without judgment. "No one should decide your life for you," he said simply. Hours later, a shadow appeared ahead, a massive orbital station hidden behind debris fields. Its lights flickered weakly and several sections looked damaged. "That's it," Lyra said softly. Elias guided the ship closer, scanning for danger. No active weapons appeared, but the silence felt wrong. They docked carefully. Inside the station, corridors stretched long and empty. Soft emergency lights blinked along the walls. Dust floated in the air, showing that no one had walked here for a long time. Lyra moved slowly, recognizing symbols and doors. "This was a research sanctuary," she said. "They studied compatibility between species, relationships, alliances." "Sounds complicated," Elias muttered. They reached a central chamber where holographic records activated automatically. A projection appeared showing scientists discussing genetic preservation and cultural bonding experiments. Lyra watched in shock. "They designed us to form connections with outsiders," she whispered. "Not by choice, but by programming." Elias felt anger rise quietly inside him. "So they planned your life before you were even awake?" She nodded, her eyes filled with confusion. "I believed my traditions were sacred, but maybe they were only instructions." The realization hit her deeply. She sat down slowly, trying to understand who she really was beyond what she had been told. Elias stayed beside her without speaking. Sometimes silence helped more than words. Suddenly, alarms echoed through the station. Incoming ships detected. Elias cursed under his breath. "They tracked us." Screens showed the bounty hunters approaching again, this time with more ships. "We don't have time," he said. Lyra stood up, her expression changing from uncertainty to determination. "I know another path," she said. "A hidden exit route." They ran through narrow corridors while explosions shook the station. Enemy forces landed behind them, their footsteps echoing loudly. Elias protected their retreat, firing carefully to slow pursuers without unnecessary destruction. Lyra guided him through hidden maintenance tunnels until they reached an old cargo bay. Their ship waited there, engines still warm. As they boarded, enemy drones appeared overhead. Elias launched quickly, dodging blasts that struck metal walls around them. The cargo ship shook violently as they escaped into open space. Only after the stars surrounded them again did the tension fade. Lyra breathed deeply. "I thought my life was decided," she said quietly, "but today I chose to leave." Elias nodded. "That's what matters." She looked at him carefully. "I stay with you not because of tradition," she said. "I stay because I want to." Her words felt different now, honest and free from old expectations. Elias felt a quiet respect growing between them. Ahead, Red Mesa Colony appeared again, small and distant. "Looks like we're heading home," he said, but he knew the final confrontation was waiting there. The people chasing them would not stop easily. As the ship moved through space, Lyra stood beside him at the controls. She looked stronger now, more confident in her own choices. The frightened woman from the cryo chamber was gone. In her place stood someone ready to decide her own future. And together they were returning to the ranch, not just to hide, but to stand their ground. The cargo ship descended slowly toward Red Mesa Colony, its engines glowing against the dark sky. Below them, the red plains stretched endlessly, quiet and waiting. Elias kept his hands steady on the controls, but his eyes remained sharp. He knew they were not returning to peace. They were returning to a battlefield. Lyra stood beside him, watching the ranch grow larger through the front glass. The familiar fences, the old barn, and the wide open land looked calm from above, but both of them knew their enemies would follow soon. "They will come quickly," she said. "Yeah," Elias replied, "and this time they won't just test us." The ship landed behind the canyon ridge, hidden from open view. Elias stepped out first, scanning the horizon. The wind moved gently across the land, carrying dust and silence. Home, but it felt different now. Lyra walked beside him toward the ranch house. Her movements were confident, no longer uncertain like before. The journey had changed her. She was no longer someone running from a past, she was someone choosing her future. Inside the workshop, Elias began preparing defenses. He activated hidden sensors, adjusted energy traps, and reprogrammed farm drones into protective units. Years of living alone on the frontier had taught him to turn simple tools into strong defenses. Lyra watched carefully. "You built all this yourself?" she asked. "Piece by piece," he said. "Frontier life means you fix your own problems." She nodded, understanding. "I will help," she said. Together they worked through the afternoon. Lyra used knowledge from the station to improve the targeting systems. She rewrote old programs, turning simple machines into smarter defenders. The ranch slowly transformed into a stronghold without losing its quiet, rustic feeling. As the twin suns began to set, warning alarms activated, ships entering atmosphere. Elias stepped outside and saw them, several dark shapes cutting through the sky, engines burning like falling stars. "They're here," he said calmly. Lyra stood beside him. "I am not afraid anymore," she said softly. "That's good," he replied, "because this ends tonight." The enemy ships landed beyond the ridge just like before, but this time more forces emerged. Armored figures moved across the ground with heavy weapons. Drones hovered above them, scanning the ranch. A voice echoed across the field. "Final warning, surrender the subject." Elias didn't respond. Instead, he pressed a small button. Hidden lights activated across the ranch perimeter. The battle began. Enemy drones rushed forward, firing energy blasts. Defensive turrets hidden inside fence posts returned fire. Dust filled the air as explosions shook the ground. Elias moved with calm precision, using cover and terrain like an experienced rider guiding a horse through danger. Lyra stayed close, directing drone movements through a handheld device. "They rely on central command," she said. "If we disrupt their coordination, they will weaken." Elias nodded and focused his fire on a larger control drone. One precise shot destroyed it, causing several enemy units to lose formation. The bounty hunters pushed forward anyway, determined to capture her. Lyra hesitated for only a moment before stepping into the open. She activated a signal from her memory implant. A bright pulse spread across the field, interfering with enemy targeting systems. "What did you do?" Elias asked. "I turned their own control codes against them," she replied. Several enemy drones crashed into the ground, powerless. The remaining hunters retreated toward their ships, but their leader stepped forward, tall, armored, and calm. "You do not understand what she represents," he said. "Her existence belongs to the future of many worlds." Lyra stood straight. "My future belongs to me," she answered. The leader hesitated, clearly not expecting resistance. Elias walked forward beside her. "She's not leaving," he said simply. For a long moment, silence filled the field. Then the leader signaled retreat. The ships lifted slowly into the sky, disappearing beyond the clouds. The battle was over. Dust settled across the ranch. The quiet returned slowly, like a deep breath after a storm. Elias lowered his weapon. "Guess they finally got the message." Lyra watched the sky for a long time before turning toward him. "I chose this," she said softly, "not because of tradition, not because of programming. Because I want to stay." He nodded. "That's all that matters." Days passed peacefully after that. Together they repaired damage around the ranch. Lyra learned more about frontier life, caring for animals, fixing machines, and watching sunsets that painted the sky in colors she had never seen before. She laughed more now. One evening they stood by the fence as the twin suns set. "This place was empty before," she said. "But now it feels alive." Elias looked across the land. "Home isn't a place," he said. "It's who you share it with." She smiled gently. The abandoned ranch was no longer abandoned. Alien technology blended with cowboy tradition, creating something new, a place where choice mattered more than destiny. And as the stars appeared above them, both knew that whatever challenges came next, they would face them together, not bound by old rules, but guided by trust, freedom, and the quiet strength of the frontier.